Legends in Modern Gods. I'm John.
I'm Richard.
Hey, Richard. How has your week been so far? All one day of it.
Pretty good. How about yours?
I'm glad we're heading to October. I like the fall. Do you like the fall?
I'm a spring guy, so we're entering the opposite side of my favorite time of year.
It's weird here in California because it gets a little cooler, but today it's 86 degrees. So sorry everybody that's anywhere else. Hey, if you are new here, welcome. We actually talk about comic books, believe it or not. We have things like the underrated book of the week. We have viewer mail where you come in with your questions and comments. We have the old fart rule where we go back 40 years to 1984 and the books that shaped our collecting lives. And we start with our hot book of the week. Richard, what do you think? It is New Avengers number 33 from 2015. What? Have you ever seen this book?
I have never seen this book before.
Kind of a cool Doom cover, though, right?
Yeah.
He's got something going on there. I'm not a big fan of that Avengers logo, but this is where storyline comes in, where the first incursion happens. What the heck does that mean? It's the collision of alternate universes with Earth being the central point of impact.
Wow. If you're just a dude living in the Bronx, just trying to have a regular life, man, stuff just keeps happening.
I want to know. Let's speaking of old fart rule. Let's you and I get in the time machine and go back to 1985, where the DC universe was considered far too confusing because there were two Earths.
Right. If only they knew.
There was an Earth 2 Flash and an Earth 1 Flash, and they were different. And people were like up in arms because we couldn't follow that. And so we had Crisis on Infinite Earths. Oh, if we only knew. High grade raws of this sucker are selling for about $15. And I'm not using the word sucker to refer to anybody that's buying this. I'm just saying it's hot because I think probably the Doom cover and the fact that Marvel trademarked the name Avengers Incursion back in 2022.
Do you know who the cover artist is here?
I don't. I did not look up that, but I'm sure the comments will immediately explode with everyone telling us it's Adi Grainoff or someone like that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Please let us know. I'm curious.
It's also a prelude to Secret Wars, as you can see. So I wonder if that has a little bit to do with why this is suddenly popping with people specking on Secret Wars. But there you go. There is our hot book of the week. Richard, I want to talk about a piece of news, unless you have something else to say about this book.
No, go ahead.
All right. Bleeding Cool. It's a gossip website, a comic book related pop culture gossip website. If you're not familiar, it used to be Rich Johnson's, Lying in the Gutters, I think was the name of his old column. Is it all accurate? No. When there's smoke, there's usually fire, though, when Rich is reporting on something. And there was an article about IDW publishing that caught my eye because we talk on this podcast quite a bit about how bad the art is in current modern comics, the interiors.
Right.
And my drum that I keep beating is because you don't want to pay people. Who wants to spend, if you're Art Adams, you're going to make coin on doing covers. Right. Why would you spend your entire 30 days of your month cranking out 23 pages for scraps when you could do 23 covers for decent money? IDW, and this is all supposed, okay? It's all alleged and it's all rumor. They're trying to get comics completed with an all-in cost of $200 per page. And by that, I mean they want to spend $200 per page for the writing, the art, the lettering, the colors, everything, $200. Now, if we're looking at the average IDW book, the number of pages, that costs them at $200 a page about $4,000 an issue. Okay. Now let's split that up between all these people that are involved. It's poverty wages, right?
Right. Oh my goodness. How can you expect quality when you are paying basically peanuts. So you're either, okay, first of all, make some assumptions. This is all digital because
Yep.
no one's going to be able to do this on Bristol board and justify the cost. They're more than likely going to be doubling up, if not tripling up, on the different roles. So the person who's doing the penciling is doing the coloring, probably doing the lettering.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely you'll have a writer, so you're going to divide it at least by 2. So out of that $200 a page, you may be doing 3 different jobs and getting $100. It just doesn't seem feasible, not and hold a level of quality to the content.
Here is what Rich Johnson is reporting is the plan. They're hoping that artists, writers, whoever, take this lower upfront payment in return for increased back end participation. So if the property gets sold to a studio, they get a bigger piece of the back end. No one has come out with any kind of firm contractual statement about what that would mean, how much it would be. Also, if you have a property that's that hot in your mind, why would you give IDW a cut of it anyway?
Exactly. And
It
you bring up a
reminds
good
me. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, it reminds me of the
No.
music industry. Like about 10 years ago, they tried this thing called 360 deals, 360-degree deals, where you're Taylor Swift and we want you to sign with us, but we get a piece of your merch, we get a piece of your live shows, we get a piece of everything, 360. Why would you ever do that if you were an artist?
Mm-hmm.
You're making your living off live shows and merch sales. Why would I give Universal a cut of that? What are you going to do for me, Universal?
Exactly.
So,
I just don't see, like you say, I just don't see the heavy hitters of the industry going for this. You're never going to get Frank Miller to do a book for IDW if this is the case, because this is just not worth his time. You'll never get artists who named artists to be on IDW for the same reason. You'll never get Alex Ross do a cover for an IDW book.
do they
So
need them? Because think about what is IDW publishing? It's all licensed stuff, with maybe the exception of Beneath the Trees, where nobody sees.
That's a good point. I mean, it is not on the same tier as Marvel or DC, but still, IDW is a valuable part of the comic book collecting universe, and I hate to see the quality drop because of this decision. Or better yet, John, you and I could sponsor a single issue of some comic. We'll send them $4,000, and we will dictate the plot. Wouldn't that be awesome? And you have the fans actually drive the narrative for a comic.
They have the Turtles. They have Star Trek. You could do that for your little Star Trek thing you want to do. The fact is, and this is a fact, Turtles, for them, that relaunch sold 300,000 units. Last Ronin was huge. Are they hurting? Is it that bad? They can't, or are licensing fees that oppressive? Is the market that depressed? If you're doing 300,000 units of a $2.99 book, let me do the math right now. Let's see. $3.99 times 300,000 is 1.197 million divided by 2, because you're giving the distributor half. You're still making nearly 600K gross per book. At that. Now that's just issue 1. It's obviously the orders drop, but it seems like a really good return on your $4,000 investment there, guys.
The only people I see benefiting from this is the board of shareholders for IDW. The artists are not going to be interested in this, at least artists of what I consider higher tier. Now, this may bring about some young blood that is living in their mom's basement, couldn't wear $200 a page, $100 a page, is better than not having $100 page, better than working at McDonald's or what have you.
Has anything changed since the 1950 sweatshops?
No, not really.
It's awful. It's awful. I don't
It
see.
is awful. It is, but what it gives them an entree. It's a lot of times a talent simply needs an opportunity.
Well, do it for exposure. We'll pay you in exposure. No, ma'am. We don't do that. Young artists, don't ever do that, please. It's the best advice I can give you. Your time and your talent is valuable.
Yeah. If anybody ever wants to trade exposure for some, it's they're trying to scam.
Now, let me go back and say, I hope this isn't true. IDW, I'm looking you in the eye. Hi, IDW. How are you? Don't do this. Pay people. If you can't make it work, it's not the talent's fault. Something's going on. You're paying too much in the licensing, or what's up?
Yeah. And a counterpoint to this, I wonder how much money they're spending now per issue. Is 4,000 a huge drop from what they're spending now?
I don't know. I do know. I'm going to caveat the hell out of this because Rich Johnson's been wrong before. So this might all be a big pile of dookie. Who knows?
I haven't been to Bleeding Cool in a long time overdue. Used to love that site.
Used to. And now it's just unmanageable with all the pop-ups and everything else. I can't take. Let's pop up to our show and tell screen. What do you say? Hi, you new here? Show and tell. Richard and I show and tell about books in our collection. Pretty simple. I'm going to start with, this thing is a monster. Tarzan's Jungle Annual #6.
Wow.
From Dell, 1957. Lots of Jesse Marsh art. The weird Tarzan. He's kind of weird looking. This thing is a monster. I mean, it is a huge, thick 100-pager plus, I think. Gorgeous, though. Gorgeous for a 1957 annual. It has survived. I don't know if this was a file copy or what. Got it at a live sale on Instagram years ago. And I have not pressed it yet, but it's gorgeous. And it's just beautiful cover. Who's missing?
Tarzan? Well, that painted cover is just gorgeous. Now that costs more than $200.
You think? I mean, you get what you IDW, please don't be true. You get what you pay for. Marvel, Disney, you get what you pay for. Maybe we should start reading DC books because they're obviously paying creators. They've got Mark Waid writing for them. Mm-hmm. They've got Jim Lee and people drawing for them. Dear Lord. Moving on. What is your first show and tell?
I'm going to start off with a book, Alpha Flight. I love Alpha Flight. Early on in the Alpha Flight run, the main character, the leader of the team, Vindicator, died. Here we got Alpha Flight 32, where his wife takes over the position of Vindicator.
Heather Hudson, and that is, I believe, a Mike Mignola cover. Early Mike Mignola.
Yep. 1985, I believe it says there.
Wow. 80. Oh, man, I was in high school.
Yeah, the series ran hot and cold. I really enjoyed the beginning of it, and then it kind of slowed down. And Puck is one of my favorite characters. He's the dude there.
Kind of didn't know what to do with that book. John Byrne said they were created just to be opponents for the X-Men, so he hadn't really thought about their characters or whatever. And then he was not a favorite of his. He didn't like the book. He didn't like his work on it. So Bill Mantlo was writing Incredible Hulk at the time, and so they decided to switch books. Byrne's like, I'll do Hulk. You come over and take Alpha Flight. So I think they were a cool looking group. I think they got by a momentum for the longest time, but people outside of Bill Mantlo didn't know what to do with them.
I have to say that Canadian flag uniform is possibly my favorite superhero costume of all time. It is just
doesn't
awesome.
It look familiar to you?
Why? What are you talking about?
Captain Canuck.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, John Byrne.
What's yours? What's your next?
We see you, John Byrne. We see you. This is not an expensive book. It's not a valuable book. It's not a key book, but it is an important book in my comic book collecting career, if you want to call it that. Invaders number 10. Why does this book matter? As a kid, bought it off the newsstand. It was an emergency fill-in issue because they were going to miss a deadline. So it reprinted a Golden Age Captain America story from Timely Comics. It's the first time I ever saw a Golden Age Captain America story.
Oh, wow.
And it fascinated me, like, how come he doesn't have stripes on the back of his costume? How come his shield is drawn inconsistently? Why is the art so funky? So this is just, it was kind of like Frank Robbins, who drew Invaders. As a kid, I didn't like it, but I was fascinated by it. Mm-hmm. Now looking back, I really like Frank Robbins. I know, guys. But I mean, like Kirby, I couldn't say I loved Kirby when I was a kid. I thought it was old fashioned and weird looking, but I was fascinated by it. I couldn't look away. And that's kind of what this book was like too. And a nice Ron Wilson faux Kirby cover.
It does look Kirby-ish.
Yeah, doing his best Jack Kirby imitation. I love the giant blown up heads from the corner box that were usually very small. So there you go. Invaders number 10. What's up?
My next, it is, I didn't know this, but this is a rare newsstand copy of Alpha Flight number 2, Fear Itself, where we get the original Vindicator comes back.
Wow.
And if you look down here, it is a newsstand.
What does it say in the indicia? Because you know how you always have like a title in there, like a placeholder. Does it say like I can't just marvel.com? What does it say above marvel.com?
Marvel Techno.
See, that's what I'm saying. They used to assign titles to near the end of the newsstand era. They would assign titles to these books because they would decide whether they're going to distribute it to the newsstand or not. So they didn't want to restart a title, like call it Fear Itself. So for like one shots or miniseries like that, they would use a generic title like Marvel Techno. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like I think your Ultimate Fallout 4 newsstand, it says Black Panther, right?
It does. It says
Right.
Black Panther.
Yeah.
I was looking to see if 2011. So this is actually the same time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right at the end there.
Right at the end. I have no idea what Marvel Techno is.
Have you ever looked it up to see if newsstands from that?
I was on eBay. I saw them going for $40.
Okay.
I paid a whole lot less for this.
I think that was down when they were down to like Barnes and Nobles, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. They were only newsstand outlets. Well, I'm sharing this one for my final show and tell book because it's been a while since I've shown one and made this joke. It is not a Doll Man Bondage cover. However, it is Marvel Team Up 113 with Spider-Man and Quasar.
Okay. I thought it was going to be Black Hawk.
No. That joke I've done to death. This is a joke I haven't. We haven't had a good Wendell Vaughn reference in a while. Great John Romita Jr. cover. Really good Mark Gruenwald story where this was his pet character Wendell Vaughn, and kind of builds him up a little bit more. Herb Trimpe art, late Herb Trimpe art. Wins. But a little Quasar love for you. What is your last show and tell book?
The last one is one of a series that people will recognize, but they will not recognize the book. It's Albedo number 6.
Oh, wow.
Albedo number 2, of course, is the first appearance of Usagi Yojimbo. And issue 3 is the first cover appearance of Usagi. So this book is the series that spawned Usagi and Stan Sakai's main character. But there were other stories that were going on. There was Albedo number 1 that didn't have any Usagi in it, and it's all these talking animals. Funny animals is the category of comics. Anthropomorphics, right? So, and there's different stories that go through here, and they're all, different humanized animal characters. And some of the stories are really deep, really intriguing, lots of political stuff in some of the storylines, and Albedo stuff especially. So if you have a chance, it's an interesting read. I won't say it's a great read, but it is definitely this. And what was the other series? Of course, I'm not going to be able to remember it.
Critters?
Thank you so much.
See how I can read Richard's mind, everybody?
He absolutely can. Critters is another series that has these same kinds of animals in it. It's a great series too, if you get a chance to pick that up as well.
We love our 80s indies. We really
do.
If you enjoy seeing us with show and tell books and talking about them, you might want to consider becoming a member, because on Wednesday's members only show, we do more show and tell with extended show and tell. We also do extended viewer mail. If you would like to become a member, you can just click join right here on YouTube, or look in the description if you're not on YouTube for a link. It's just $2.99 a month. And you also get Thursday live streams. So hopefully you're getting your money's worth. Somebody wrote a viewer mail saying we should charge $10 a month.
Yes, your invoice is in the mail.
Yeah, thank you. We'll bribe you for that comment. Speaking of viewer mail, guess what, Richard? It's time for viewer mail.
You've got mail.
Cough, cough. My first piece of viewer mail comes to us from George Henry. I remember picking up New Teen Titans Annual #1, Captain Victory #6, and Daredevil 189, top 5 cover of all time, on a blazing hot day at the Aqueduct Flea Market in Queens as a kid. I probably read Daredevil 190 a dozen times. I talked about that last week. Even as a kid, I understood the Elektra saga was over and this arc was complete. As a 53-year-old who's lived a life, I now find those last few pages amazing. In particular, the triumphant last page. Matt's redemption of Elektra and the sacrifice involved are touching. The power of comic books, the greatest hobby in the world. Great show as always, fellas. Thank you, George.
Somebody's seen a live sale.
I know. George, thank you. My point about Klaus Janson and Frank Miller staying just a little too long to the party, that next issue, 191, where Matt digs up the grave, that one I felt was unnecessary. And then you get these really loose Klaus Janson issues after that. That's where I think it was like, okay, 190, if they just stopped and left at 190, I guess, maybe I'm overthinking it, but obviously, George, you thought 190 was a good stopping point too. So thanks for writing in. Richard, what do you got?
My next piece is from our bronzeandmodergons@gmail.com from Kevin Brennan. Hi, John and Richard. I think I'm supposed to start my email by proclaiming my love for the show, which I do.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's how they almost start. I love the camaraderie and all the knowledge and passion for comics you share each week. Thank you. I'm watching the current show and saw the show and tell featuring the custom wedding gift cover. I thought I'd share my favorite gift from our wedding 17 years ago. A good friend had the legendary Fred Hembeck recreate the Amazing Spider-Man Annual 21 cover as his gift to us. Let me tell you, my wife was ecstatic.
Wow.
It's only a little ironic we got married and received this gift the same year Marvel thought one more day was a good idea. Oh, keep up the great work on the show. Enjoy the rest of your day. Kevin Brennan. And he's at Calgary Comics, calgarycomicsbooks.com. I'm assuming in beautiful Calgary, Canada. But if you look at, and we're going to put up the picture of the cover here, it is absolutely gorgeous. That is such a great idea. To me, it sounds like just the perfect topping for as a wedding present, and something you can look on. Obviously, 17 years later, you still have it and still showing it off. So that is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Very nice. My next piece of your mail comes from our buddy Steve, aka Deslock, Texas.
Okay. I went on eBay on YouTube, and I didn't have the time to do it, but they all do it on Star Blazers for Deslock. They have this chant that they do, and I was going to overlay one of my buttons. I have buttons on my mixer here so that I could make it play different things. And I was going to make it play that Deathlock chant every time we mention his name. So next time, if we call on Deathlock, you may hear me hit that button.
So that was just a big buildup to let us down that you didn't do it.
I didn't have the time. I thought of it today, and I found the YouTube clip. I just didn't have the time to actually sample it.
Deathlock TX writes, I have an opinion about CBCS's lawsuit that is probably contrarian here. I can totally understand and sympathize with the company's lawsuit against their ex-employees from working at PSA. Strategically, CBCS is trying to succeed in the comic book grading business against CGC, who has a significantly greater market share. I suspect the fear of being squeezed out of business by a new, well-financed competitor. Despite having a great product, they could end up like BlackBerry did in the cell phone game. Yeah, I also think if you are, if you're taking company trade secrets and you're emailing them to yourself or you're going to work for someone else, not a good look. I hope it's not true.
Yeah, yeah, we'll let this play out in the courts before we make any real comments on this. But if those kinds of insinuations are true, then yeah, that's not good.
There are some really draconian NDAs, though, that I wonder if they would actually hold up in court. Again, my old business, the music biz, is notorious for non-competes and things like that. Well, that's fine, but when there are 3 major labels, a non-compete is basically telling you can't go work again. It's dumb. So those don't hold up really. But I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut, put my hand on my chin like this, and watch.
Get your popcorn.
I will say, don't make YouTube videos about your dad if he's being sued. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that wasn't very wise.
What is your next piece of your mail?
My next piece is from Tony GR. He sent this also to our bronze and minor gods at gmail.com email address. Hi, John and Richard. Very happy to be a member of your channel. Well, we're happy to have you.
Welcome.
I have a comic that I can't find any information on. I thought you or your viewers might know something about its origins. Last year, my LCS put these comics aside for me. I was collecting 3D and Flex record comics, and the owner had a run of Scout come in. Scout 16 had 2 copies. One was a regular 3D issue. The other was a black and white non-3D copy. The non-3D comic was printed offset in 1 color black, not digital, on heavy uncoated stock, maybe 80 pounds offset text. The cover was the same stock as the regular issue and seems to come from the same print run. The book is about twice as thick as the 3D version. It is also signed by artist-writer Timothy Truman, editor Kat, I can never pronounce her name.
Ironwood.
Okay, she does it on purpose. All right.
Yes.
And writer Bo Smith. It looks like they did at least 100 of these. I tried to find more information on this variant, but so far no luck. I can't even find a similar copy on eBay. Any idea where this book might have come from? Photos attached. Thanks, Tony GR. If anybody has any solid information on it, it'd be great. Now, I do know another Eclipse book that
I can answer this if you want me to.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Eclipse did a series of 3D books, including the book that Richard is having a vapor lock on right now, Miracle Man 3D.
Thank you. Thank you.
As part of the American with Disabilities Act, because Kat Ironwood was very much a proponent of helping out people with disabilities, they did black and white reprints of those for people who could not enjoy 3D with glasses for vision issues or whatever. And the only way you could get them was by mail order from Eclipse Direct. There were, I believe, 400 of Miracle Man 3D printed, which is probably the scarcest Miracle Man book, even scarcer than your Alan Moore one that you're trying to find.
I'm still looking for.
Yeah. And I can't imagine Scout number 16 having more than 100 copies made. So you have a true rarity there, Tony. The problem is, who wants it? You
Yeah.
know, it's
Sorry to say
truly rare.
that.
Yeah. Tim Truman is popular. Scout was a popular book, but it has had its day, come and gone, a little bit forgotten. I think people know Tim Truman more for his work with the Grateful Dead and for Grimjack more than they do Scout. But it is rare. It is a really cool curio, especially if you love 80s indies. If it was the Miracle Man 3D, you'd be in a lot better place.
Yes, I wish to find a copy of that Miracle Man. The regular 3D, there are a dime a dozen, and every time I come across one, I open it like it's a potential Christmas present because you don't know. It looks just like the non 3D issue, so you have to actually open it and look to see, are the pages black? And if so, then you've hit the proverbial jackpot. So
Well,
far, I haven't found one.
it's kind of like we were talking about those X-Men 97 comic packs. The weight is different.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
The weight is
as
different.
Tony points out, it's a different coating, it's different stock they used for the interior pages. So if you feel it and it doesn't feel like a regular comic book, you might have one there. I just can't imagine there's floating around, with 100 of them or so, mail order only. I wonder, with that person that had that Scout collection, they must have loved Scout. I must have every Scout variant there is.
There is somebody out there has that same sentiment. So,
Yeah.
if you ever decide to sell it, you may find a buyer for it because there is someone out there who wants it.
Tony, put it up on eBay for $1 million and buy it now and see what happens. I love those. I love
I
those.
do too.
My next piece of viewer mail comes to us from Chien and Kun. I hope I said that right. I said this to someone just now, but I realize it applies to the entire community. So here, pressing and other artificial processes disguise the true grade of books across the board. The value of books has been inflated long before this bending incident by people like you who have decided to superficially disguise flaws in books so you can receive more money for them. The fact that some say that these bends are just pressing undone says it all. That's a thought.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. First of all, the problem isn't that the pressing is being undone from the bends. The problem is the bends are causing stress lines. Now, sometimes those stress lines are from a book that was pressed and now is reverting because of that. Many people have reported their books were 100% fine when they sent them in, and now they have bends. So pressing has very little to do with Banana Gate in that respect. Also, you can argue about pressing being beneficial or not till the cows come home. That horse has left the barn officially. C&K. It's almost like yelling at a meteor coming towards you.
God.
It's done. It is done. It's done. I don't know who you're hoping to convince. You think you're going to engage enough people to rise up and go down with pressing, and it's going to happen? I don't want to say you're living in a fool's paradise, buddy, but let's come here to reality. It's not going to happen.
Right. I mean, like John says, that horse has left the barn. People have found out ways to maximize their potential investment, and that involves pressing. And so they will do that because it is not. There's nothing stopping them from doing it. If all of a sudden the grading companies and notice pressing or had a way to determine if a book had been pressed or not, and they rejected books that had pressing, all of a sudden pressing would disappear. It is not necessarily something.
How are you going to find that out?
I don't know. There's really no way of finding it. I have a hypothetical machine that I invented that I'm charging CGC $100,000 a year to use. But there's really no way. There's really no way of telling. And the whole argument against pressing, it really does not improve the structure of a book. It simply improves the visual component of the book.
Well, I think that's his argument is, you're taking something that was wrinkled and not necessarily color breaking and you're smoothing it out. Prove I did.
Yeah. And but again, this is a very subjective thing. People, they have books they bought 40 years ago, and it has a patina, because they've read it over those years. They would never think of getting it pressed because the condition of the book indicates their love of the book. Fine, perfectly fine. Other people buy a book because they want to resell it, and for reselling purposes, the best way to get a price is to press it. So they press it. Also fine. It really is dependent on the person and their intention for that book, and really is hard to fault them for that.
C&K, I say this not to be smarmy, not to be insulting. Please do not take it that way. But this argument is really very 2006. It's done. It's over. I mean, if you hate pressing that bad, I don't know what to tell you, because it's done. If you had an AF-15, would you press it?
Me?
If it hadn't been pressed?
I would press it. I wouldn't send it off to a third-party presser. It would be either you or me. Maybe both of us. I would fly out to California so that we could press it together.
Exactly. So I hear you, but I've heard it before, and it's just, I don't know what the point is at this point. It's done. So let's move on. Richard, you have your final piece of viewer mail.
My last piece is from Zach Brobst.
Zach.
Zach. I had no idea the Myth Adventure series had a comic adaptation. The Myth Adventures of Skeeve and Oz was not only well written and hilarious, but held some really heartfelt advice on life and families. I totally agree with Richard and recommend it to my friends with kids every chance I get. I am, you say that, and I am so remiss to my children. I did not bring it up to my kids. My kids and I, we read through all the Captain Underpants books, all those era of books, and we had a great time doing it. And this series, the Myth Adventures, a little bit more mature than the Captain Underpants, but it's, along those same lines where there is a lot of hijinks and adventures, and and as Zach says, a lot of advice on living life that people of the typical age who are reading this, which are early teens, could benefit from. Great book. And again, Zach and I highly recommend the series. You can get them. There aren't any used booksellers around anymore, are there?
Yeah, I miss them. There's a few,
but you could get it cheap because it's been in print for at least 40 years. So there's tons of copies out there. If you come across one, do buy it, because you don't even really need to start at the beginning. Just buy it and read it and learn about Dragon Poker and all the other stuff that goes on in this series.
Have you looked for the comic adaptation on eBay? Maybe there's a lot.
That's a good point. I will look for it. I just have, after we talked about it last, I meant to, but I will do it for sure.
You have another chance, Richard, since you didn't share it with your kids growing up. They're both in college. They're both soon to have grandchildren.
Oh, God.
So maybe you can share it with your grandkids, because we are a couple of old farts, and it is the old fart rule. Yes, it was the most depressing transition for Richard to hear.
Let's let him be out of college before we start talking grandkids.
All right, deal. My pick for the old fart rule this week is Three-Dimensional Alien Worlds #1. Speaking of 3D books, this is a true 3D book from Pacific Comics in 1984. It is the one and only issue of what was planned as an annual, but Pacific Comics ended up going belly up before a second issue could be prepared. I think this is a classic Joe Chiodo cover. People, for some reason, when all that Dave Stevens stuff started, this book kind of got swept up in it a little bit. I think people wrongly think this is a Dave Stevens cover. It is not a Dave Stevens cover. It is Joe Chiodo. There is no Dave Stevens art inside of this, but there is a very early Art Adams story inside. CGC 9.8 sold in July for a whopping $99. Richard, any interest in this book?
I love the cover. The cover is just, for the obvious reasons.
Two big reasons.
Yeah, but the whole 50s theme with the rocket spaceship, I love those covers. So yeah, definitely this would be something that I would pick up if I saw it.
Yeah, I've seen a few copies flying out there at the conventions lately. I thought this was a more expensive book than it actually is, apparently. So if I see one floating in a bin somewhere, I will snag it. Let's move on to our underrated books of the week. Richard, you're going way back.
Yeah, my pick this week is Secret Origins #1, DC, back in 1961. This isn't to be confused by any of the later series with the same name, Secret Origins. But this one features the origin stories for Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, Adam Strange, Manhunter from Mars, of course, Martian Manhunter, we call him today, Flash, the Superman Batman team up, the really corny stuff, and other things too. So it's a great way to refresh people's knowledge of some of these characters' backstories. You have to remember some of these characters went back to the 50s, specifically the Flash, and Wonder Woman is even older than that. So this is a way of getting those origin stories and the background stories for these characters into the heads of kids today, or in 1961 in this case. Each story had its own writers and its own artists. You had Jack Kirby, Gil Kane, Carmen Infantino, Ross Andrew, and other. There were also some great writers who were associated with this, and it was giant. It was 84 pages. An 8.5 sold for $475 a year ago. That was the most recent normal sale. A 9.6, which is the highest graded, that sold earlier this year for $7,800, I believe.
There's a 9.6 of this.
There's a 9.6, yes.
Wow.
But it's a cool book. I like these kinds of origins. People have to remember, back in 1961, there wasn't the internet to go to find out the backstory of a certain hero. You had to have some avenue of getting that backstory. And it was a great thing for DC too, because they could sell a book that basically rewrote stories they already had told.
Cost them nothing to do but the printing.
Exactly. So it's a win-win situation.
You look at this book, there are a few things about it. I don't have it. I really want a copy. I've had low grade copies in the past. I've never had a really nice copy. I love that my Challengers of the Unknown by Jack Kirby is up there front and center. That's how popular that book was in 1961. I love that just a couple short years later, Marvel would completely rip this off for Marvel Tales #1, right down to the cover layout.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on, Stan. So I don't have one. Do you have one?
I don't. I'm looking for one, but haven't found one.
And just that Ira Shap logo. Look at that giant DC bullet, Superman bullet. I love this cover. I don't want it for inside. I want to display this. Great pick. Mine pales somewhat in comparison. My underrated book of this week is Captain America 275. This book has a lot going for it. First appearance of the new Baron Zemo, Helmut Zemo, aka the Phoenix, from Cap 168. Bernie Rosenthal, Cap's girlfriend, discovers that Steve Rogers is Captain America. You've got the new corner box art. Really cool design there. I love that hint for Christmas, Richard, for your buddy.
That's a nice Christmas ornament, isn't it?
A classic Cap cover by Mike Zeck. I think this should be right up there with all those classic Steranko covers and Kirby covers. A CGC 9.8 last sold in May for $112. That is way down from its Cap and the Winter Soldier peak of 2022, where it sold for $227, double what it sells for now. So Cap 275, a nice little key that is down in value right now. If you haven't picked one up, might be a good time.
I think it's a great time to pick it up. I like Marvel's interpretation of Baron Zemo. now while we have a depression in the market, it's a great time to pick this up. I'm sure they're going to reuse the character.
Thunderbolts, anyone?
Yeah, exactly. Very, very, very good. So yeah, pick it up if you can.
Let's see. All right. Thanks, everyone. Another Monday in the books. Members, we will see you Wednesday and Thursday. Everyone else, we'll see you next week.
Everybody, stay safe.